Inside the Birds is back. What's going on, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan here for another Inside the Birds. And we are creeping closer toward the return of Eagles football. Just a couple of days away, about 4, if you're listening to us on Wednesday when it comes out. So that's always good. And if you're catching us late, it's even closer to the Eagles versus the Steelers on Sunday, 1 o'clock at the Linc. Excited about getting back into some football after a week off. So we'll talk about some of the things going on with the Eagles as far as a few of their transactions, the trade deadline coming up soon. We'll get into that. Catch a few things here, few things to discuss in this pod. And then, of course, on Friday, we'll do a more comprehensive, as we always do, game preview podcast. And that'll give way to the return of our Sunday pregame show, 10 a.m. at Rivers Casino. Myself, Adam, Greg Cosell, and Jason Avant. And then, of course, after the game, we'll have the post-game show. It'll be me, Adam, and Trey Thomas. So sort of a return to normalcy, Adam Caplan, as we get very close to Eagles football here.
Yeah, we actually have a rarity because we usually don't talk about the Eagles opponent until Friday, which we will do. But we're going to also hit on that today because we have some good early intel.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin actually spoke. He has his press conference on Tuesday. Boy, and I know that coaches sort of butter up. They have platitudes for the other team, but he knew by heart the Eagles plus minus numbers. It's pretty interesting, and he just was waxing poetic about how they rush. It was pretty interesting because he was breaking down the tape.
Yeah.
And then also on the show, we'll briefly discuss the trade deadline. We're gonna have the names that we're hearing on Friday, so listen for that along with our preview on Friday of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the trade deadline is always fun because you saw the McCaffrey trade last week. Now that was unique because of it was just the time. The way I was explained to me by someone who was involved in it, there was never really Panthers' plan, based on what the other teams were hearing, to trade him when they did. But because so many teams called and because they had a game coming up, they really had to make a decision because, as you know, teams don't like trading players after Tuesday because what happens is you want them in the game plan on Wednesday.
Sure.
Fast forward, they make the trade, and McCaffrey only showed up on Friday. He took his physical. He took some individual reps in practice. He went for the walkthrough on Saturday, meetings on Friday, and he played. I mean, he played on Sunday, so that you'd rather not do it that way. But it's when you and I first started covering the league, there were never blockbuster trades. There were very few, and it's very ho-hum. There were some years there were no trades. Not anymore. That's different, which we love. I would expect the Eagles to do something. I know that people ask us every year, and we had the intel on facts when we were a year early, but we gave play-by-play of what was going on with Darius Slay the year before they traded for him. And our line source very high up said that the Eagles did not offer enough. They just couldn't. They were not agreeing on it. Plus, they could not agree on what his contract would look like, an extension. And then the next year, they got it done. And quite frankly, I got to tell you, that trade was a steal.
Oh yeah, definitely. Absolutely. That's interesting. You said you expect that the Eagles will do something. I expect that they would like to. I just don't know if something's going to materialize. We'll talk about that.
Could be look. When I try to warn people when we said something about running backs that they're going to add someone. I never said when it would happen.
Right.
We said it's going to be back with size. That guy turned out to be Trey Sermon.
True.
Would they claim him off waivers? I think
he was claimed off waivers. Yeah.
Right. So I believe it'll be a depth piece, which we felt all along. We mentioned weeks ago. They were in on the OLB market or pass rusher market for depth after Barnett got hurt. So I expect them to push for something like that. If they don't get it done, they don't get it done. But to rephrase it, they're going to try to do something. I believe. There are all sorts of rumors. We'll sort through all of them that we've heard, what's true and what's not true, and what we think is realistic. And we'll see what happens. But I wouldn't expect anything earth-shattering. Like the Chauncey, what's he call himself now? CJ Gardner-Johnson?
CJ Gardner-Johnson, right. Yeah.
That one materialized because of the Eagles, as they seem to do a lot, and they're really good at it. They took advantage of the Slay issues that he had with his team. He wanted out. They wanted to trade him. He just had issues with the head coach. In 2009, when the Eagles knew that Jason Peters was having significant issues with the Bills front office, took advantage of that. I got to give Eagles, particularly the GM, credit. They keep an eye. They talk to teams. They know because around trade deadlines or around the initial 53-man roster, through August, you're talking, hey, it's a story with this guy, like they did with AJ Brown. They talked to John Robinson, the Eagles did, leading up to it. Remember, they did the Marco Murray trade with him, so they have a great relationship with him.
Yeah,
and they're keeping constant communication. If something breaks down, hey, we'll be interested. Nnamdi Asomugha, this is going back to 2011. They were checking in with the agent. They were checking to see where he wanted to go. They found out it was them and the Jets. Now, obviously, if you look back, maybe they wish they didn't get him, but hey, it is what it is.
right.
Getting good intel on understanding where the agent is with the club, where the player is, and what his expectations are, what kind of role he could have. This is all important. Just like in 17 when they got Jay Ajayi, they knew that Adam Gase wanted him off the team, and they did their homework on him. They knew he had some issues with their coaches and so forth. And it's amazing here, for more or less, that if guys have had issues somewhere else, almost always, not always, but most of the time, guys fall in line and they have no problems here.
True. That is very true. And as we sort of tease, I'll do a little tease a little bit. We know that one of the talking points for the Eagles when they traded for Jay Ajayi was that they had a chance to see him up close in person because the Eagles had joint practices that year with the Dolphins. So they had what they felt was a pretty good scouting report on him that wasn't just from watching tape or relying on word of mouth. They got to see him up close and personal for a couple of days. There is a team that the Eagles had joint practices with this year that maybe will move a player. So we'll get into that. It might be a good fit for the Eagles. So we'll talk about that in a second. I want to point out on the Q&A show, Adam, that it was there was actually some really good stuff there. Not that I should be surprised, but one of the things they talked about coming out of the bye was basically a validation of some of the things that Paul Gunther said in our Patreon interview with him, and that was that and then some of the things that you had also heard and talked about in the last pod, that when you come out of the bye and you're as successful as the Eagles are, in this case undefeated, you don't want to change too much, but you also don't want to be stale. And Jason was talking about how the coaches would take all of the analytical information, what are you doing when you're 11 personnel? What are you doing when you're in 12 personnel? What are you doing when you're spread and empty, and then kind of say, well, we don't want to not do these things, but we don't want to be predictable. So how do we do some other things? How do we add to that, enhance what we do out of these groupings, out of these personnel packages, so that not only are we not stale, but we're also effective in other ways? And so that's what we can expect from the Eagles coming out here. You and I have talked about a couple of things, be it more shot plays, getting Miles Sanders involved as a receiver at times. Gainwell as well, Quez Watkins. So I just thought it was really interesting to hear Quentin Michael and Jason Avant talk about it, on how things tend to change. And remember, they played for the coach who has been the most successful coach in NFL history in coming out of the bye, in Andy Reid.
Unbelievable.
So they it's like their source is pretty good on this.
And by the way, Andy denies, I asked him this, even when he was here, he's still doing well off the bye. And he claims the same thing every year. He doesn't do anything special other than kick the players out.
Yeah.
For the most part, I know, I don't remember the year. It might have been with Kansas. I know there was one year where he kept the players a little bit longer, like instead of them just getting their treatment on Monday then leaving. It might have been one year they kept them for a couple of days. So might have been
they mentioned that there were a couple maybe 1 or 2 years where they had to stay for a day or two.
But it's amazing. But what I would tell you, in 2017, the example on the Ajayi trade, if you look at what they had, right? Wendell Smallwood was a 5th rounder, decent third back. Corey Clement, who was an unbelievable story, and LeGarrette Blount, of course. But Blount was an older back, a lot of wear and tear. They weren't really sure how much he could handle. Smallwood had some minor injuries, and Clement was a rookie. They knew they needed one more. And at that trade deadline, I remember calling the Eagles and someone in their front office, and I said, hey, I know this is kind of crazy, but I mean, you guys might be doing something special this year. He goes, we're having that talk right now. Where they're being the person said they were being real with their discussions about who they were, and putting their cards on the table in their personnel meetings. Like, yeah, we're pretty good. We're better than we thought.
Right.
We need to go for something. You just mentioned Miami. This ties into it. They had that intel, and here's the thing, because they cannot share that Miami tape with anyone. like Miami has the Eagles tape. They can't share that tape from practice when they were here in Philly. It was 2 days maybe.
Right.
Plus, like when you go through preseason tape, game tape, but watching him on your grass, that's some and just and they may have actually, I don't know this, but I wonder because John Lynch mentioned this on the McCaffrey trade. I guess he talked to the Carolinas GM Fitterer. I don't know where he talked about Greenbrier. I don't. Oh, I know where. Okay, the Niners before the Carolina game when they blew out the Panthers. They were on the East Coast. They do this when they play back-to-back East Coast games.
Right.
They stay in out east, and I guess he called them, and they were starting to really push the talks a little bit more. So it's just a matter of relationships to move this forward here, and understanding who you are and what you need to get to where you want to go. And 2017 is, as Sean Landetta said to me when we were flying back the night before the Super Bowl, flying with me, Andrew Brandon, Sean on our plane when there was like 10 of us on there. He said he goes, he'd never seen anything like it this time in the league, and just being as a fan, he'd never seen a team literally every roster move they made in 17 turned out to be right. Even the Patrick Robinson. I mean, come on. You know?
Every move, even the small one, like getting Daniel Ellerby,
Daniel Ellerby, yeah,
Daniel Ellerby, just to be a run-stopping linebacker, which they played Atlanta in the first round, and they had what's his face? I can't remember it right now. I can see him. Freeman, Devontae
Freeman, yeah, he was
and then they had somebody else. I think
Kevin Coleman.
In general, they were a big running team. Yeah. So that was just smart, they made all the right moves. So we'll see what Howie Roseman has. I mean, he's made pretty much every right move since the end of last year to get this team competitive and be where it's at. Also, aside from Q&A, we got a slew. I want to thank our new Patreon subscribers. We got a slew of them over the weekend, and I imagine that was because of some of the discussion we had about our interview with Paul Gunther in our Chalk Talk series, a former NFL defensive coordinator. He's from Bucks County. He's been a long time with the Bengals under Mike Zimmer, and then with the Raiders. This year he's taken off. We'll probably see him back in the league sometime soon. But if you want to continue to get bonus exclusive content like this, just go to patreon.com/InsideTheBirds. That's how you sign up and become a subscriber. And again, we're new to Adam does a chat on Discord every Wednesday from 8 to 8:30, just for our subscribers. And we're adding to this. Next month, we're going to have a former NFL head coach on with us. So it'll be
2 things on that. Yes. On that, we're going to do this for you guys, for Patreon subscribers only. Filippo, I talked to him. He's happy to take questions for our Patreon subscribers, and that head coach, I have a good I'm zeroed in on the guy. He's I'm not going to give it away because I don't want to give it away who it is. And this guy and I we've developed a nice texting relationship, as they say.
Yes.
And I'm pretty certain he would take questions.
Right.
Really super smart guy on offense. I'll leave it at that.
Yes. By the way, we don't say we're not going to give the name away because we're trying to be jerks, or we just, until something's definite and agreed upon, we have the date set, the time set, because we don't want to sit here and say we're going to have so and so on, and then at the last 2 days before, he's like, oh, you know what, I realize I'm not there that day, we'll have to do it tomorrow. So we just try to take it down to the wire. We're not trying to be jerks like that, just to let people know. All right, let's start this podcast off with an interesting transaction that the Eagles made. I guess he's becoming the new Julian Vandervelde, or the new who's the other guy who should be on and off the team and on and off the practice squad. Who was it?
Vandervelde. No one's going to beat that.
Yeah,
that
no one will beat the Vandervelde record. But there was someone who was coming close. Close.
I think I know where you're going, but I don't remember the damn player's name. Oh, it's going to kill me. Now you're killing me over this.
Well, we'll figure it out probably in the course of our conversation. But the Eagles brought back familiar name, wide receiver / punt returner Greg Ward to the practice squad this week. Now, he was with the team, of course, in training camp, had an injury. I think it was turf toe, right? He had a toe. I know it was toe. A toe
injury.
Bad.
It was actually significant. Yeah. He reached an injury settlement on September 9th, and it was significant enough that he had to go on IR.
Yep.
So they had to wait till the settlement. There's a settlement period where you can't he could sign with any team, but he can't sign with the Eagles until the settlement is over.
Yes.
It's what the doctor, it's how long they have to agree on medical. They have to agree on how long it'll take him to heal. And so he's back on the practice squad. And it's funny. I do this whenever something happens with the Eagles. I just want to see what the fans are thinking and talking about. And it's kind of comical. So what I do is I'll give you folks a little intel on this. What I do to see what fans are thinking, feeling. I take the search box on Twitter, and I'll search the name. Like it could be any transaction. It was. I'll give you an example. When Sirianni had his press conference, his opener, when people were killing him over it, I was just curious. January of 21, when he had his own, when he was in that room, it was so bizarre. He was nervous. He didn't know what he was saying. He didn't come off well. It was unbelievable. It wasn't just the fans. They didn't know who the hell this guy was. The national media, former players killing Sirianni over it. And I thought it was such overkill because you and I had some really good background on his history, just people who work with him.
Yeah.
It wasn't surprising. He's a little bit green, but you got to give people a chance. Really.
Yeah. Like we did not deny the optics weren't great, but we also thought it got to be a little overkill.
Let's exactly, overkill. So anyway, long story short, and I do it sort of because I always want to know what people are thinking, what are they feeling. If we have time, sometimes I'll address something, or you and I will address. If there's a real issue with the Eagles that we're not addressing, it's important to you, we'll address it. If it's something that came out in a press conference, something crazy that like one of the D coordinators said, like the late great Jim Johnson would say stuff sometimes, as you know, because he would say like I should have said that, and we would laugh because that's one of the many things I love about the guy. This is pre-Twitter, but imagine now if he said some of the stuff he'd say. He wouldn't give away game plans, but he'd talk about coverages and what he's thinking. Where in today's NFL, you just don't do that. How you're going to attack the opponent. But I love that stuff when coaches do that. So I'm always interested to see what people think. So I use that search box and kind of get some idea of what you're thinking. So it's kind of the way we come up with that stuff.
Sure. No, good stuff on that. So the first thought that entered my head when they brought Greg Ward back was that why? Because they had already after he got hurt and then was waived with the injury settlement. Or no,
released.
He was on IR. Yeah,
he was released.
He's just released. They had already seemingly moved on because as a punt returner, they had already kept Britton Covey, and then he was on the practice squad. Then he was elevated. Then he was on the 53, and then they also had Devin Allen on the practice squad. And as a receiver, Lord knows they have 5 receivers already on the 53, and then they have Auden Tate and Devin Allen and Deion Kane on the practice squad. So it's almost like how many wide receivers do you need? But they bring back Greg Ward, and you kind of wonder. I mean, his thing is because he was a very dependable receiver for this team for a while, but they have upgraded so much that he does not need to be a wide receiver for this team. But we do know that Britton Covey's had some issues on punt return. In general, punt return hasn't been great.
Security.
And you wonder are they bringing him back to sort of prepare him in case they need to go and make a switch there?
Yeah, I know this is what I saw on the fans were wondering on Twitter about this, and you set it up well. Is Covey in trouble? Here's the thing, though, with Greg Ward. We talked about this when he's been here. As a returner, yes, he's got excellent hands. There's no question. The issue is he fair catches way too much. Covey's more explosive in a short area. Just that the Ward is an experienced guy. He can only punt return. Covey could do both, but he's better punt returner. That's kind of what they like him to do is just probably in the end just punt return. But again, he could do both. My thing with Devin Allen is he's not a receiver, though. You saw him make that incredible catch. I know it was against deep backup against Cleveland, but you could see his straight line speed on that 9 route. If Allen ever comes up here, he'd be the kickoff returner because let's call it like it is. Quez Watkins is not comfortable as a returner. Come on.
No, he's not.
So you have to ask yourself this question: why is Devin Allen here if he's not going to be? I get he's on the practice squad, but maybe they don't think he's ready and played football in 6 years, whatever the case may be. The one area where they could be better is on special teams return. I think we all know that.
Yeah, I think that with Greg Ward, it's not that you're looking for better returns, right? It's not like Britton Covey's in trouble because he's not averaging a high enough return. Does he have more issues putting the ball on the carpet, to the point where the coaches say, we're such a good team. The last thing we need right now is giving the opponent a second opportunity because we can't field a punt. So I think they can say, I'm fine with not getting 15 yards of return. Or that's excessively high, but you know what I'm saying. I'm fine with not getting explosion in the return game, but I can't have the ball
10,
on the ground.
Yeah, but you just hit on it. If you're over 10, that's phenomenal. Michael Clay was talking about that.
Yeah.
But what they can't have is, as you just said, they cannot put the ball on the ground. Because when you're looking at the team, the NFL's best team, it's not just their record. They don't beat themselves. They don't turn it over. They're very well coached. Players buy in. It's just a really good football team. They're the best team in the NFL. I think we all know that.
Mm-hmm.
But what could derail their season, and they've only turned it over twice, but what could derail their season potentially in the playoffs is if the punter, by the way, Sky Moore for the Chiefs, right? Mm-hmm. Sky Moore, I think, has at least 3 fumbles on returns. And he's barely, though he's very gifted, he's going to be replaced on punt returns if he doesn't stop doing this. And that goes to your point, which is very fair.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably part of this. And I've always said this about Greg Ward. It always bothered me. And I know it was one of their former coaches did not like him. If I recall, in fact, I know this because it happened. When they were deciding whether to bring him up one year after practice one, they clearly were struggling at the receiver. They him and hauled on it, and they were split on whether to bring him up. I'm like, every time this guy is asked to be a slot receiver, he does well. Catches the football. I don't care how fast he gets open.
Right.
This guy, as you talked about, he's got really good hands. He's secure. So I think that does play into it. But in the end, as you said, he doesn't. They don't need him to be a receiver because they're locked in there.
Right. Right.
When would he ever get on the field? Like Covey, quite frankly, has got the better short area quickness, so that you're solving that with Covey already on the roster anyway. He was signed off of it. He was there. They actually signed him off. They signed him off the practice squad, so he's there. He wasn't elevated the last time.
Yeah.
So I think we all see this. He's there as a security blanket. But the only other thing is I'm going to get their workout list for the entire season. I have it. I just haven't gone through it yet. I want to see if they worked out any punt returners, because Greg Ward is a fail-safe to me.
Right.
He doesn't. He's a Mr. Fair Catch. That's my only issue with him. Can you try to return it once in a while?
Yeah, no, he was Mr. Safe. But again, that's a big reason why he might be here right now. As far as injuries, the Eagles are pretty fortunate coming out of the break here. Now, the only guys you were concerned about going into the bye week were Lane Johnson. He was in the concussion protocol. They sort of made it sound like they expected him to be all right when the team came back. So we'll find out more probably by Thursday, if not Wednesday. Yeah, by today.
Yeah.
And then CJ Gardner-Johnson had hurt his hand in the game. Now, it's funny. I think you probably got this too. I was talking with a couple people from the team, and the sense of what they thought could have been that injury, when it happened, the way he was holding his hand and kind of grimacing in pain. And then also, like when Sayamalo went down 2 weeks ago, or 2 games ago, I should say, he had to come out from that ankle, I think it was, and it looked really bad. Yeah. So both guys I spoke to were like, we're actually a lot better than I thought. It's good because I brought up the offensive line. It's like, yeah, you've had guys going in and out, but whenever you see Sayamalo on the ground, you kind of always expect it's going to be like 6 weeks, because that's the way it's been for him the last few years. And fortunately it wasn't. And then for CJ to get back in that game was pretty good too. This team, they're not perfectly healthy, but they certainly have been worse in the past, and they're pretty good as far as only person they've lost for the year since the start of the year, I believe, was Derek Barnett.
Yeah. Unless they have the dreaded Wednesday later today, they are practicing today, by the way. We should mention. Yeah, they're not. We were wondering about this. They could have a pre-practice walkthrough, but they're going to practice today, as our understanding.
Yep.
So, and they'll have their first injury report of the week. They have to have it Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. But Gardner-Johnson missed 16 plays in that game. And I remember when he was holding it, if you're watching us here on YouTube, he was holding it and going like this. Oh man, I hope it's not broken.
Yeah.
But when he came back, because he obviously I'm sure he had X-rays. He had to, or he went to the medical, whatever he had to, because he was out for a bit. But when he came back in the second half, I was like, whoa, okay. Came back. So he did finish the game. Now, players who are listed on the injury report coming into the Dallas game: Kenny Gainwell with a rib injury, not ribs. Bilotta with the shoulder, Dickerson with the ankle, Kelsey with the ankle, Jake Elliott with the right ankle, and Avante Maddox with the ankle, which caused him to miss a couple games. The only question will be with those guys: will they still even be on the injury report? No, you're right. I mean, I don't.
We'll have to see if the range of motion issue is impacting Mailata at all. But that I obviously played in the game and was able to make it through with the protective harness there. So we'll have to see if he's still wearing it or if he's fine now.
Yeah, they actually confirmed your note on that during the game. Yep. I don't know how. I guess. Oh, I know why. What happens is the Saturday production meeting. I've talked to the announcing teams over the years for games.
Yeah.
So what happens is, that night before the game, they'll talk about this, and I don't remember I can't remember who the hell did
it. Was Aikman. I heard him say it.
Oh, was it
Wait,
Troy?
No, it's Sunday night. Couldn't have been Aikman. It was who does the Sunday night games?
Collinsworth and Trico?
Yeah, it was Collinsworth who said it, not Aikman, right?
Right. I was like, oh wow, nice. But the only question is will they be able to listen to the injury report? So knock on wood for the Eagles' sake, they continue this good health. And because I know we had someone reach out on Twitter on Tuesday and say, hey, could you discuss where they should trade Dillard? I've gone back and forth on this thing. You and I have actually talked about this a bunch in the last month.
Yeah.
I don't think you can do it. Like,
I wouldn't.
So let me throw this at you. Okay? Because we're going to get into the trade deadline discussion. We're going to have a lot more on Friday when we'll get some names for you. We think are actually realistic possibilities rather than throwing stuff on the wall. We'll give you what we're hearing. But we're going to get into this here. And I don't know that I even do it for a second. I'll tell you why. I just don't think Jack Driscoll's a left tackle. I just don't. He had some anchor issues in the game that he started. He's a good backup, better off at right. I don't think he's strong enough. I know Dillard. Look, Dillard's a former first-round pick. So let me ask you this question: would you do it for a second? Would you give up? You're the one who told me no a week ago. I asked you. So
I really don't think I would at this point. I mean, I consider that a chips on the table type of move that you're not making. Instead of making a move to strengthen your team, like all chips are in, we're getting Golden Tate or we're getting Jay Ajayi. I consider this and all the chips are in, and we're not trading our backup left tackle who we think can start for us and we can win games with if we have him. And we're worried, like you just said, that we can't win games, even though they've won games with Driscoll, but over the long haul, we can't win a championship with Jack Driscoll as left, not only Jack Driscoll at left tackle, but then one more injury away from really being backs against the wall at that position, especially. So I would consider it sometimes you have to give up something really good. Like I think 3rd round pick they had to give up for Golden Tate, right?
Yes.
That's a lot for a guy you knew you weren't keeping at the end of the year.
Yeah.
Sometimes in this case, it's sort of the inverse. You're just not taking the great value there because your chips are on the table.
They were so bad at receiver in 2019. They had to do it. And you know what the shame of it is? I really thought that would have worked had they got that done in the offseason where they gave Dr. Dame to the offense. Because I remember Mike Rowe talking about this with the media. They kind of were given this player and they had to figure it out because he was, when he was first drafted by Seattle, I think it was Seattle. I know he played from Seattle, Detroit. I think it was Seattle. He was actually a deep threat.
Yes.
He was played on the outside, and then then he got moved to the inside. It became a really good slot receiver. And unfortunately, it just, they couldn't get it going. I didn't blame them for making that trade. I understood why they did it. They had to do something. And they just could not get him used the right way, that really the way it could have worked, that they probably should have done.
Right.
And it wound up being a disappointment. But fact of the matter is, when you're an Eagles team, when you're the best team in the National Football League, this is not, we all knew how great the roster was comparatively to the other teams. And we also know how good their schedule was. And they're going to be right there in the end. So I probably wouldn't trade. Well, here's the other problem. Okay, let's move to the next level here. Who's calling for a left tackle? It's probably going to be a good team. Right?
That's a really good question. Has anybody? I know the Giants are going to be out Evan Neal for a little while, but he's a right tackle.
Only, yeah.
And we know that Dillard cannot play right. Plus, the Eagles aren't going to trade the Giants
of course,
offensive tackle. How's Seattle been on the offensive line?
They're really good. In fact, this is the shocker. They finally got it right with their bookend tackles. Abe Lucas played right tackle. Charles Cross, who I know some teams didn't like,
Yeah.
but he's doing a good job.
Oh,
They
the
finally,
Rams. The Rams need a tackle.
well, they do.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
And they don't care about picks. They'd probably give up 2 second-round picks.
No Boom. Yeah, No Boom's lost for the season. He tore his Achilles.
He wasn't even playing that well before he was lost for the season.
Yeah,
if
they
I'm not
gave
mistaken.
him. He's out for the season. They're going with Jackson, number 77, left tackle. Cosell said he saw his tape.
Right.
The only guy they have left from their week one is Rob Havenstein. He's been there forever as your right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
They're an absolute mess. The Rams. They're this whole league. When I did these power rankings, you can find on InsideTheBirds.com. It took me a long time to juggle where everyone should be.
I believe it.
Because the Niners are going to bounce back. They're 3-4.
Sure.
But the Rams are so beat up on their offensive line. They have one guy who makes plays. That's Cooper Kupp at receiver. Allen Robinson's done nothing. He's not explosive. He has trouble getting open. And they can't protect Stafford. And their defense is not anywhere close to the level of last year. But the Niners, they're going to be there, folks. I know they're 3-4. They got smoked by the great Chiefs. Their roster's too good. They've lost a couple players. Their best corner, Mosley, for the season, but they're gonna be okay. They're gonna be okay.
Okay. All right. But yeah, the Rams. I'm trying to think of an AFC team because I think if Howie was going to move Dillard, it would probably be to an AFC team. I don't know. Could the Raiders get themselves back into things? And
no, they got Colt Miller. He's left.
Oh, right. He's good. I keep
Garrett
thinking
Bowles
right,
lost. Yeah, Garrett Bowles is lost for the season. They're left tackle.
Yeah, but they have to actually prove that they're good before.
Yeah. But I'm just looking at the teams that you said in the AFC. Not really. Well, actually, Tennessee. Yeah, they absolutely could use a left tackle. They're using Dennis Daly, who was a backup guard tackle for the Panthers. They and the Raven Clark. Remember, they signed off the Eagles practice squad.
Sure. Why aren't they using LaRaven Clark?
I don't know. Daly played left in college, but he's not really a starting left tackle at this level.
Right.
They have a really below average offensive line. They're another team that's completely overachieving. Well, Giants have better talent on offense, but it is amazing how important coaching this year. It's
yeah.
Like the Giants. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. In the end, I think Dillard stays here. We'll see. But
we're gonna look into it. Yeah,
yeah.
We're gonna we had the note a year. Yeah, we had the nugget. We'd said there were 3 teams to call. One of them was the Panthers. Panthers were told they were not going to trade Dillard last year, which I was flabbergasted. I was like, okay.
Well, doesn't that tell you though, if they weren't going to trade him last year when they weren't even competitive, they weren't that good by the time the trade deadline came out. They were just sort of getting their own way going, and then why would they trade him this year when they have a chance to win a Super Bowl?
I agree. No, I that's why you convinced me when you said it. When I said second round pick 3 weeks ago, and I brought it up again today. Like, nope. Like, because you outline it well, because Driscoll showed that he's not. I understand Big B played way better than anyone could have thought. Plus, he's a huge human being. That's why it's called Big B.
Yeah.
He to me is a real left tackle. Whereas, he's playing guard after lunch, but back then he was left tackle. Jack Driscoll, he can do it in a pinch for a couple games, because there's a saying in the National Football League: the longer backups start, the more they look like backups. So you got to know what you got there. I know Stoutland's a stud; he's amazing as a coach. You always trust his judgment, but as you just outlined it, if Mailata couldn't play for a long time, are you really going to go with Driscoll? I'd rather go with Dillard and just don't worry about getting the draft pick. They're going to get Saints draft pick next year. They got theirs. They have a very good roster that I know they have. We'll get into later in November. We'll talk about. I know a lot of people want to talk about contracts. We got you. We're gonna do that for you. But we're not. We're only 7 weeks. We got to get past the trade line first.
Definitely. All right. So, wow, we kind of walked into it. We're gonna get a little more into the trade deadline, at least as far as some guys that the Eagles may be interested in as far as acquiring in a second. We've been telling you about Mojo, right? The sports stock market. It's a chance for you to invest in what you know, and that's sports. It's your favorite players. Forget big businesses, Fortune 500 companies that you're just hoping to make some money off and you know nothing about. Turn your sports knowledge into real money with Mojo, all right? The shares that you can get entitle you to a guaranteed payout that's based on career-ending stats. It's like fantasy football meets the stock market. There's no off days and no off seasons because Players' price can rise and fall based on anything that might happen even after the year, right? A trade, an injury, anything like that could happen. That's what makes it really fascinating and interesting, and more like the stock market than even fantasy football. You can build a portfolio and buy and sell on your own terms every game, every season. So, Adam, Mojo is hey, we're partners with Mojo. We love what they've got going on. And any players right now that you think let's keep it to the Eagles as
real quick though.
Yeah.
Right? What did I say back 4 weeks ago? I said get Kenneth Walker right now.
You did.
Get him now. Don't before anyone. If you're playing Mojo, it's a stock market game, folks. His stock's going to go up through the roof. His penny always gets hurt. He got hurt. He's out for the season, and he's a stud. Thank goodness for him, because in one league I lost Javonte Williams for the season, Breece Hall for the season. I have Kenny Walker.
There you go.
Skywalker from New York Nick, but that's
I remember him. Yeah. So Mojo's available in New Jersey on iOS, and just by downloading the app, Adam, you get the chance to win $10,000 in free shares of player stock. So we'll have the link to Mojo in the description box of this podcast or this YouTube video. That'll give you a chance to win up to $10,000 in free shares of player stock. You got to be 21 or over and physically located in New Jersey to trade on Mojo. And if you have a gambling problem, help's available at 1-800-GAMBLER. Now, the Eagles, I was going to say, second half, but there are actually some guys right now in the NFL. I'm going to ask you about this because a guy who should rise, I would think, would be Michael Carter, right? Because now the injury I know they acquired James Robinson, but it looks like you're going to see more snaps for Michael Carter. In fact, he was up 12.03% after his last game. So what do you think?
Temporarily, but here's one thing you got to understand: Michael Carter. He's not a volume running back. He's not at this level. The reason why they drafted Paul is because they wanted size at running back.
Right.
Stud.
Right.
Unfortunately, terrible injury. So who knows when he'll be ready next year? But he'll be better than he was because they're going to have to lean on him. And James Robinson, he came back fairly well from the Achilles, but he's still not the same. But I'm going to give you a couple guys. Okay, I'm going to give you a couple guys here.
Okay.
Mike Williams is lost for a while with a high ankle sprain. The guy's going to take over Josh Palmer now. He missed. Now remember, they're on the bye. He has a concussion. Get on him now. He's got to get over his concussion. Former Eagle for a spell, DeAndre Carter will be the third receiver with Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen needs to rest that hamstring, but Palmer's going to start. What I'm told is he could back up all three positions. So Palmer's a guy. I know that some people are disappointed with him this year when he's had.
Yeah, I had him when Keenan Allen was out and he didn't do anything for me.
He's actually had 3 different injuries, and I don't think he was healthy.
But
I think he's still, though, his stock now is probably low because, as you said, you're disappointed with him. Get it, totally get it. But I think his stock, I think he's got a chance to do something for you.
Okay, that's a good one. That's a really good one.
Yep. Trying to think of.
By the way, while you're looking and thinking, because you mentioned Mike Williams with the injury, down 13.12% on Mojo now because of that injury. So hopefully you sold. I don't know why you would have, but if you sold Williams before he got hurt, you were smart.
I got one for you. Now, this just happened earlier this week, and it shocked me. I get it, but I don't get it. There are a lot of reasons why Matt Ryan got benched. After 7 games, when you're 3-3-1, a game and a half behind the first place, so they would have lost the tiebreaker because they've already lost the Titans twice. Sam Ehlinger is a Taylor Heineke runaround quarterback. He's athletic. I think he ran the ball 500 times at Texas over 4 years.
Well, that's pretty low. That's a decent amount.
Yeah. He ran a lot. And to me, he's a guy who's got a chance. They're really good at the receiver position. Okay, at tight end. Look, if you want to get in on a guy early, heck, why not?
Yeah, there you go. Sam Ehlinger. I mean, he's probably going to be a very low price on Mojo, and what do you got to lose? He probably can only go up. So we'll see.
That would be one. I'm just trying to think. Is there anyone else who's off the radar?
What about Chuba Hubbard? Chuba,
Chuba had a good game. So did Foreman. They ran the heck over Tampa. Who saw that coming?
Not me.
Hubbard got hurt late in the game, so I don't know what his status is.
Okay. Well, if he's healthy, he might be. I know they're supposedly splitting time with him and Deontay Foreman, but if Hubbard plays well, got to think he'll have an opportunity to get a little bit more time there. So that would be a good pickup on Mojo if you're looking to diversify that portfolio of yours. All right, let's continue our discussion about the Eagles trade deadline. So you feel like they'll be aggressive. My sense
try to
is,
be. Again,
yeah, well, they're aggressive. They'll be aggressive, but
we'll do names Friday. We don't have any. We don't give out names unless we're confirmed. But we're going to give you a background on how this stuff works. This is from personal people,
right? Because you're going to hear the Eagles' names involved with this, and it's already been out there, like McCaffrey and all that. Then that's sort of, it can be misleading. It's due diligence being confused sometimes with a push.
Right. What happens is they're going to call, because what Roseman does really well. He wants to know what teams are asking for. Mm-hmm. It's good for future reference. Remember Joe Banner telling me it's really great intel for the future if you're trying to track what the value for a trade would be for that position. Mm-hmm. McCaffrey's very unique because I get that he's a running back and people say they're devalued. It's to an extent it's correct, but he's such an outlier. He's so gifted. I get the past 2 years he's had injuries. That's why they couldn't get a first-round pick. But I thought the Panthers absolutely fleeced the Niners to get 4 draft picks for a guy who cannot, past years has been hurt.
Right.
This is not a quarterback. This is a running back, folks.
Yeah.
He did a great job. I was stunned. I had a GM tell me his team did not need a running back. And I said, well, what would you offer? He goes, oh, if we needed one, probably 2, no better than 2. If we're not, he goes, it's just a running back. He said he's super gifted, but yeah, he just said, this guy said, look, he's a game changer when he's healthy because that's the problem. That's why he's not worth the first. I'm like, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah, and on top of that, by the way, I mean, you're talking about the coach, Kyle Shanahan, who probably gets more out of undrafted or late round pick running backs than any other coach in the league. It's shocking that they would give up that much for that.
Do you remember Mike Anderson?
Of course.
Mike Anderson, Alandis Gary, of course, the great Terrell Davis. Yeah. Hall of Famer.
I mean, and you're talking about Mike Shanahan, even Kyle has done. I mean, Kyle in Atlanta got Tevin Coleman and obviously we mentioned him earlier, Freeman. But Devontae Freeman played his best football those years, and he went out to San Francisco and Eli Mitchell, and nobody ever heard of him. And then last year, it's what they do.
But
Raheem Mostert.
Raheem Mosher, who he's doing well for Dolphins, but for the Dolphins, that was Chip Kelly's guy, if you recall.
Yes.
So what I think the Panthers did, because they had a lot of leverage, there were a lot of teams involved, a lot of teams called, as I understand it. Mm-hmm. What I think happened there is they saw the leverage they had. They knew the Niners are going for it, and they knew once, because it's what's funny is the Bills tried to get him in back in April. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it was in March during the early part of free agency, but they weren't doing it because of the cap. They were going to take a major cap hit, which they took now, and they also wanted to be aggressive in free agency and also extend contracts, which they did both. But they got the quarterback position wrong, and they saw it. They were being real with themselves, and they said, it's not going to work. So let's at least move a couple players, but they're not going to move Brian Burns or Derek Brown. These are building blocks. These are guys you build around.
Yeah, I agree.
Why would they move those guys? They're not far away at all. They just got to get. But until they got the quarterback situation right, they got no chance. When you fail quarterback, you can't win.
No doubt about it. All right, so the actual names of people who are on the block or could be on the block. We'll get into that Friday. We don't want to start throwing out names right now. Got some homework to do, and
no, we'll give you the names. The only thing we're going to give you Friday is what you want to know. You want to know who the Eagles like and who they're on. We're going to have that for you,
right?
But you've heard the names: Kareem Hunt. Yep. Some of the guys are out there. Running back.
Is Bradley Chubb on the block? I didn't see that, but a friend of mine told me
he. I believe he's available based on what I've heard. Mm-hmm. He's had an injury history, very gifted.
Yeah.
The problem there is, it's good that he's on the final year, but the thing here is he's got to play a lot. Now, if you're the Eagles, see, this is an interesting name. We'll talk more about him on Friday. He's got to play to justify the trade, and I don't know what the Denver would take, but it's Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern. 4 p.m. Eastern, so they've got time. Not that Denver's had any chance to compete anymore, but because their season's pretty much toast based on what happened to Russell Wilson and how poorly he's playing before he got hurt. But he's got to play a lot. Like if you're trading for him, that's what they have. This is what we were talking about at the top of the show. Like how much like Ajayi was part of the running back group. He didn't have to play. He was the guy more or less some games.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're trading for Bradley Chubb, he's starting and he's going to have to play a ton of snaps.
So theoretically, who would he play over? He's either got to play over Hassan Reddick or Josh Sweat. I don't.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I don't know how you would do that. Sweaty's got to play, and
Yeah,
Reddick's got to play.
and you can't even kick one of those two guys inside in a 4-man rush because then you got to take either Javon Hargrave or Fletcher Cox off the field.
Right. So it's a tough call. He's still really gifted, pretty high character guy.
Yeah.
It's interesting. He's playing mid 50% of the snaps each game. No, I'm sorry, mid 70s that area. So he's clearly a starter.
Mm-hmm.
He plays special teams if you need him to, but he's really a pass rusher.
Right.
Had some injuries. He had the ACL earlier. Now last year he did play a full season. Oh, missed one game.
Mm-hmm.
Missed a ton in 19. No, I'm sorry, that's 18. He played a full season. Last year he missed 10 games. The season before he missed 2. Missed a ton in 19. Played a full season. It's funny. His first year was the full season. Then he tore his ACL.
Right.
He hasn't missed any time this year. It's out there, and it's true that teams are calling about him. I don't know that Denver would be willing to do it because they were another team. It's not Super Bowl, but big aspirations about where the team could go.
Right.
But remember now, new front office. That means a lot. Like when teams make a decision what they're going to do, they inherit players. They have to make a decision on what and how they see these players for the future.
Right. Well, we'll have more on Friday. Meanwhile, the Eagles' opponents, or rivals, I should say, Dallas Cowboys did make a depth trade in trading a 6th-round pick in 2023 for Jonathan Hankins and a 2024 7th. So what they really did was kind of beef up their run defense with a couple of guys on the mend right now that they have up front on the D-line.
Yeah, you know what I like? You know what? This is a typical depth. We were talking earlier about the depth, training for depth and stuff.
Yeah.
Jonathan Hankins is a nose tackle. He's a good, he was a good run stopper. Look, he's sort of in the twilight of his career. He was backing up for the Raiders.
Right.
Raiders know that they're not winning the division. They're on the outskirts of a potential pushing for a wild card. But he's a guy who wasn't playing a lot of snaps. They have a 4-man rotation anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys get depth. They had a couple guys get banged up. They have depth on the D line, but he's a nose tackle, He's a zero player. He plays over the nose and
head up. Yep.
So what the Cowboys did is they traded a 6th rounder and they got Hankins and a 7th rounder for 24. They had to give him a 6th rounder for next year. Right. That's an easy trade. If you want depth, that's exactly what kind of trade goes down.
Yeah. And again, he's not what he used to be, but if he's in there playing 1st and 2nd down a few times, then that helps their defense a little bit. So, there's no doubt. To me, that's a good move for the Cowboys. Really no downside to it.
Agreed.
All right. Let us direct your attention to our friends at PHLSportsNation.com. They're enhancing the fans' experience with all coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at PHLSportsNation.com and on Twitter at PHLSportsNation. Let's pause real quick for a word from our other great sponsors, including our friends at Sky Motor Cars. And if you hop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get the greatest possible deal. And if you can't stop in, make sure you visit them at skymotorcars.com. All right, just a quick look at the Steelers. The Steelers are not what they normally are around this time. They are 2-5. They are in jeopardy of becoming the first Mike Tomlin head coach team to finish under 500. But obviously, Adam, they made a change a couple of weeks ago. I'm not surprised it happened, and I'm not even surprised it happened that soon. Their new quarterback is Kenny Pickett, their 1st-round pick. And although he is turning the ball over at a rate that's common among rookie quarterbacks, he had 3 interceptions in their last game. In what I've seen so far, I have seen improvement in their offense as opposed to when Mitch Trubisky was the passer, and just ball distribution, placement, accuracy, attacking defenses vertically in the middle field too. That Mitch was not doing at all.
We're going to talk more about this. We got some really good stuff from Steel sources on the roster. But let me just tell you one thing. The thing that I love about Pickett, people could say all they want about him wearing a glove, his hand's too small. That's great. He's super aggressive.
Yeah.
He's one of the things, even the couple of personnel guys we talked to before the draft who had real issues with his arm strength, they just love, though, that he's aggressive. Like, not everyone's going to have a cannon. Not everyone's born with that. But you have to be willing to make throws. And he's not bashful for a rookie. Now, as you said, he's thrown a bunch of picks. He did 3 in the last game. The last one was ridiculous. I don't know. Even if it was a timing issue.
That was a weird. You're talking about the one where he got flushed out of the pocket and was running and just threw it to the guy in the end zone, right? That
no, it was. Well, it was on the sideline.
The sideline.
They had a great visual of it. There was no one even no receivers.
I don't know what he was thinking there.
Yeah, I don't know. Even if he expected the guy to be there, you could see that he's not.
I
don't know, but I do like how aggressive he is. And Cosell said, even though they got smoked and embarrassed by the Bills, whatever it was, 38-3 or something in Buffalo.
Yep.
He did say the tape was actually threw the ball really well. He said, look, he doesn't grade like PFF does. He doesn't do it like that. He just grades by what his eyes tell him.
Right.
And knowing everything he knows about the quarterback position, how he grades them. Greg grades it a different way. He said he played really well. He goes, the numbers don't show it. But if you just look at their pass target group is good. But the thing that kills them, because Eagles are not a good run defense, they do not run the ball well. Najee Harris has got zero explosiveness. He's a downhill grinder. He grinds carries. That's when you have a lead, especially. But they don't have any juice. McFarland, the former Maryland running back, who Matt Canada, their OC, actually coached 1 year at Maryland. He never made it because he was going to be their changeup. He never made it, and they just don't have much of a run game. Their offensive lines play a little bit better than people expect. It's not very talented. It's very beatable.
I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago that it's not your typical Steelers offensive line where they have about 2 or 3 Pro Bowlers on it, especially on the interior. But it's not as bad as people thought it was, because it looked bad with Roethlisberger and then with Mitch Trubisky, and then obviously they're not running the ball well. But you're seeing now with Pickett throwing the ball. Pickett's not getting sacked left and right and hit left, right, and center. They just don't really move the D lines like they normally do when they have big, better offensive linemen. But they're not terrible, as bad, or at least as bad as they were getting reputed to be. I agree with that.
And then defensively, because they have to, mostly because of the injury issues they have. We'll have more on their injuries on Friday's show, but they're playing a lot of zone. It's so funny. I knew this was going to happen against Buffalo. They played a lot of 2 deep. Josh Allen threw it over their heads. It's just
that's great when you play 2 deep and he can throw it over your head anyway.
He doesn't care. I love this guy. Just if you knew where Josh Allen was as a rookie, how inaccurate it was. I mean, there's just no way you could have seen. Cosell brought that up to me. He goes, "Can you believe how good he is after what he went through as a rookie?"
Yeah.
And he would miss throws left and right, bailing and all that stuff. But now he's the NFL's best quarterback, and he's unbelievably special. I'll say this much: their corners aren't very talented. Minkah Fitzpatrick's a stud. We'll talk about him on Friday show and how they're using them. But they're beatable. They overachieved. The one game where they were missing Minkah and their top 3 corners, I don't know how the hell they did it. When they beat Tampa, it was unbelievable. Like for fantasy, I know people are going out there like, "What the hell? What's wrong with Brady? What's wrong with Godwin? This is ridiculous." You're right, but NFL teams get paid too. This is what the season's been about. No one could figure it out.
Right.
And then also, TJ Watt will not play. He had knee surgery in addition to the partially torn biceps.
Right. So. To your point on what they're doing defensively, I know I know the Steelers are really happy about the impact Brian Flores was having on that staff. I mean, they have some good. I mean, first of all, Mike Tomlin is a defensive guy. Secondly, you got Brian Flores in there. Third, Terrell Austin has been a good defensive coach in the league for a while and was a head coach candidate for a little while there. So they have some good coaching, and I know they're pretty. I mean, there have been some games where they haven't been great, but again, their personnel. You lost TJ Watt. They don't exactly have first-class talent at cornerback.
Highsmith is good.
Highsmith is a good player. That's an Andrew DeCecco find from years ago. Andrew DeCecco was really high on Alex Highsmith.
He's good from, I think, UNC Charlotte.
Yes, from UNC Charlotte.
They're doing a little bit with smoke and mirrors. The coaching's been good. It's just they just don't have enough talent. This is a game, and I need to get more on this. How there's some people that we need to talk to how we think they're going to approach the Steelers secondary. because I know the Steelers have had some issues with the run, but I think it's a little overstated. The only 100+ runner they've given up to is Chubb,
Right.
but they were the worst run defense last year, which is crazy because for 25 years of the best run defense.
Yeah, they're the Steelers. That's why it's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what happened, but we'll find out. But the weather, by the way, the early forecast looks good, low 60s, and still not getting the bad weather yet. It's good.
Love it. No tropical storm Caplan updates.
No,
it's been too
he'll
nice.
come out in November. Yeah.
There you go. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles Intel. Big thanks to our producer, Tyler Strasser. And as always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.